Thank you for joining us live with Miami's Community News. And our guest today is Rabbi Yossi Harlig from Chabad of Kendall and Pinecrest and Friendship Circle. We're here today to talk about a very sobering experience, which is Surfside, right, and the collapse and talk about your experience there. It was a year ago tonight that tragedy occurred. So tell us what that was like, if you don't mind, from the time when you went to sleep the evening of, and then you got a phone call. What was that like?
Yeah, it was interesting. The night before the building collapse, I went out that night with my wife and dinner, and I remember we were sitting at the water on Collins, like in the 30s and 40s. Went to sleep around, that night. Got a call 4:30 in the morning from the head of the Chaplain's program, and I see my phone ringing. I knew if they're calling, then something is bad. And I pick up the phone. He says, "Could you go to Surfside?" And there's a building collapse. So that moment, I thought a building collapsed. It's probably a building under construction. When I showed up there, anyone that showed up that morning will describe the same thing. You couldn't believe your eyes. And you walk up to the building and you see a pile of rubble. And then someone points out to you, he says, "You see that side of the building? That side of the building," because remember, there were two sides. One side collapsed, the other side didn't. "You see that side that's standing? The other side is collapsed in this pile." And it's such a shock. And when I showed up there, I was standing, this is right early in the morning before they send away the family members. And I remember one particular person was crying to me and saying that my son came there last night and he just came for a funeral and he slept in that building with his girlfriend. I want to run in there and get him out. Another police officer was telling me that his grandmother lived in that building, and he feels his grandmother was supposed to leave that building like in a day or two. Another individual was crying and screaming and said their loved one, their family member, came that night, the night before, from New York. They got into the building at 10:30 at night, and the collapse happened at 1:22. So those were the first few moments. I'm standing there with people in shock. And at that moment, everyone was hoping and praying that they could bring them out. They'll be injured, but they could bring them out. So that was going on right then. And then I remember the mayor came, the governor came.
And at that point, were there family members there?
Yes.
Right.
On the
Immediately.
Side. Immediately. Not a lot. At that point, they're starting to send the family members to the Surfside Community Center
which is a few blocks away.
A few blocks north of that. And they're trying to send them away. And people were running, panicking. First of all, there were people in the building that survived, that the part of the building didn't collapse. So the family.
How far away were those two buildings? The one that collapsed versus the other building?
No, the building itself I'm talking about.
Yes.
Part of the building collapsed. That's what I'm talking about. So the people in the building, remember, there is, if you look at the back of the building, we don't have a picture now, there's two sections of porches. Two sections. One section came down, the north side, the south side is still standing. And then the whole front of the building was standing. So all those people ran out of the building and left everything behind. They never went back. They lost everything in the building. So when family members were showing up, some of the family members, people who survived, who were able to make it out of the building, came there.
So were they standing when the survivors, the ones that came out of that building, the adjoining, were they standing there at the site looking at what used to be their home?
So when I got there, there was some of them were still in front of the building talking about that they were in the building. But remember, this happened at 1:23 in the morning. I got to maybe 5:30 in the morning. By then, they were already out a few hours, and some already left. But there was a group. But at that time, they were trying to get everyone to get to the Surfside Community Center. Now, one of the challenges they had right away is how many people are in the building? How do you know how many people are in the building? It's not like this hotel and it's not like a plane. You have a list of people. It's not like a school. God forbid, when there's a shooting, you know who the students are. You don't know sleeping in the building. Unfortunately, there were people showed up to the building who this is not their building. One apartment, I heard a few friends came together and they prayed together every Wednesday night or wherever it was. And they decided some of them to sleep over because they didn't want to drive back to Kendall. And they were all in the building. So no one really knew. So I knew, and me and a few other chaplains knew some people in the building because in the Jewish community, there was a large Jewish community in that building. Some of them who go to services weren't showing up to services. So right away, people sending texts. They belong to our shul. They didn't come. So I kind of had names right away of 10, 15 people. So when the mayor showed up and the governor showed up, we were starting to talk to them right away and giving them numbers that we started to get, 15, 20 names that we knew right away. And so that was going on the first few hours.
So when you were there, how long did it take for it to really get inside you? Like, wow, this happened. This is not like a dream. This is real. People, and you knew instantly that many, many people had died.
First of all, we didn't know how many people were in the building, but I knew within a few hours this is not good. So what happened was then the mayor, Kava, said, let's go to the family, where the families are meeting. And I must tell you, that may have been as more difficult to see than even the building itself. Because the building, you just see rubble. And I saw a few families in the beginning, and I was hugging with them and praying with them. Then when you go to the family center, I still remember it like today. It's like pandemonium. People are screaming, collapsing on the floor. At that point, people were still hoping that they're going to be able to pull the family members out. And I remember there was a line of family members standing in line with the first responders, giving them a list of names and loved ones to tell them they live in the building. Did you hear from them? At that point, they don't know who survived or didn't survive. So that was going on the first few hours. So right away it became also very clear to me that, that it's important, since I'm a chaplain in the Miami-Dade Police Department, to be involved on many different levels, because thank God we have a great relationship with the first responders, and they rely on us to give them guidance and advice of how to be the go-between between them and the Jewish community, even though we're not only there for the Jewish community, but since there are a lot of Jewish people there, to be go-between them and the families, like getting guidance of what's important and what's our tradition. So we were with the first responders, then we were with the families, and that was going on the first 24, 48 hours, with the government and the meetings with the governor and the mayor.
At that point, the first responders are there.
Correct.
Trying to find people.
Correct.
And I don't want to leave the first responders out of this as far as the trauma that occurred to them. All right, obviously to the families and to the ones that are departed. So here the people are digging through and you saw them from the beginning doing that. What was when they were searching? They obviously thought that there was some opportunity to find people.
Correct.
Did any of them confide in you what that was like for themselves to be able to do this, looking for live people or people?
Right. What made this story so difficult, different than any other story, even what happened, the tragedy in Texas or Orlando, is that this was going on. Usually it's one day, God forbid, a plane crash or shooting, and then you move on. Here, it's 30 days of every single day trying to do one thing to help someone, bring back a loved one to a family member alive. And they realize that it's a very, very difficult task, because the way the building collapsed, it's literally, you take 100, using these numbers, I'm not 100% if I'm accurate, 120 feet, and it's down to 15 feet, and it's like a pancake. Someone could survive is if there was a pocket. There's a pocket, then they could survive. That's what they realized right then. But also the challenge of the first few days, it was raining, there was a fire in the building. So, and the families, the first 48 hours, 72 hours, were very, very frustrated, because they said they don't understand. With America, we have the best team. How could it be that we didn't pull anyone out alive yet? How could it be that And
you would hear that.
100%. And there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of tension. So I remember Saturday night, I got a call, quickly come back, and we got to be there with the families. And I said, I'm telling you, they're on the scene. Unfortunately, they're working with very difficult conditions. And you can't have 1,000 people, 10,000 people running a pile, because it was a lot of danger there. And you could maybe kill other people who are trapped. What changed everything was, I think it was Sunday, they made a decision, which is a decision that a lot of people thought was a wrong decision, but it turned out to be the best decision, which is they invited the families to come to the site. Remember, at that time, the site was, you couldn't get to the site. Only the first responders, the chaplains, and we were helping the chaplains and the families. And the reason they did it is because they saw the tension in the room by the briefings. A lot of anger, a lot of the feeling that you're not doing enough, feeling like people are just sitting around eating pizza and They're not throwing in all the resources. They're doing it halfway. So I made a decision, let's bring the family members there. And I remember being on the bus with the family members, driving from the hotel to the site. And the family members, was a lot of anger, a lot of tension. And then they walked next to the building, which was the building next door they stood in. I was there with them. And right in the beginning, family members were screaming out their loved ones' names. And it rips your heart to see it. Remember, the last time they spoke to their family members, they were alive and well, overlooking the water in Surfside. Life couldn't be better than that, right? And you're living the life. And you don't expect 120 laying in bed and 124 in a pile of rubble at that point. So it was such shock to them. So they came in, they were screaming their loved ones' names. It was very painful, crying. Some even collapsed. But what I saw over the hour,
there were dozens of people doing that.
They did it in shifts.
Okay.
In shifts. They offered families to come to the site. They needed that moment. And what happened was that at the end of the hour, you saw calmness. And then at the bus ride back, it was a completely different change. What happened? At that moment, people realized how difficult that pile is and how hard they're really working. For some people, they came to the realization more than likely they're not going to make it out alive. And at that moment, their wish is just to be able to bury them. And for some people, it gave them confidence. No, they're going to find them alive. But what did change, because I was in the room by the briefings with 300-400 people in the room, it changed that at that moment, it wasn't first responders against the people and that tension. It became all one big family. At the end of the briefings, the family members would hug the first responders. The first responders would hug them. We're all in it together. We all want the same thing. We all want to bring your family member out alive. And if we can't, we want to return the family member.
So what is that like for you personally as this is going on and you're seeing this tragedy unfolding and people reckoning with that their loved one is probably gone? What is that like for you when you see it in mass like that?
It's very overwhelming. I can't even process it. That's how overwhelming it is. But, one of the questions I asked myself is, you're really dealing in a tragedy beyond imagination. I would float between the pile and dealing with the first responders. They would call us when they pulled out a body to do prayers on the body. We were there by notifications when family members were notified. Not only me, we have 10 chaplains. I'm just representing all the chaplains in this conversation. We would be there for notifications. We would be in the room when they did the briefings with the family members, hoping on the hope that maybe there's some good news, and every time there isn't any good news. That was on a daily basis. And I asked myself numerous times, why am I not getting so emotional, breaking down and crying? And I asked a professional, I said, because it's not like me. Sometimes I see stories, I get sad, I may even get emotional about it. And they said, when you're dealing as a first responder, which you are on the front lines at that point, I forgot the word he used, maybe red alert, that you kind of shut your emotions down and you just focus on what you have to do. I noticed that month when I went to my office in the morning, I said, let me get some work done. I couldn't get it work done. I felt like I had to be there because I felt like there's so much I need to do. There's so much people depending on the chaplains because we had played so many roles that I couldn't really focus on anything else. But emotional moment happened. I remember I was walking down the street, maybe day 4 or 5, and a father comes over to us. This scene happened to be caught live on TV. He comes over to me and another police officer and gives us a hug. And he says, I want to thank you for bringing back my child. I was able to bury him. Mm. That's a father's dream. You hear this?
Yes.
That's what, the notifications were a sense of relief. That's what was different than typically.
Now, the county, and I assume the state was part of that, made a decision. We're going to stay here until the job is done. I remember when that decision was made. Right. I'm going, such a relief for the family. Right. That chapter, I don't know that it's closed, but it was an open book at that point.
There was another decision they made that they're going to be very, very honest with the families. They're not going to sugarcoat it. Also, they wanted the Israeli team to come. The families wanted. They felt, the Israelis are the best, and especially even though the people in Miami may have felt, we're also the best in the world. They said this is the first time ever they let an outside country come in to work side by side. Sometimes they work under them, to work side by side and take a lead with Miami-Dade County.
I don't know that there was ever a perfect way to handle it, but it sure was handled extremely well. I mean, by everybody that was there. And the decision, let's show the family what's going on. The unison that I'm hearing from you must have been overwhelming. So, oh my goodness. So we're together on this.
Right. I mean, I had another moment that we had that togetherness feeling is when the President Biden came, they asked the chaplains to be in the room because, this goes against all protocol. Usually you do a background check on anyone. They were concerned the family members are so agitated that if someone goes to the president, they have, the Secret Service has like a bang, knock them out of their way. And they didn't want that. So I remember when Biden was there and Governor and his wife and First Lady, and Governor DeSantis was there and the First Lady. Marco Rubio was there. Obviously, Cava, our mayor was there, and maybe Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all the families, and it was a big room. And you see, the Secret Service was very nervous because the president was going from table to table, the governor was walking around, and it was maybe 3 hours. And I said, "This looks like a shiva house." Shiva house is a place where you go for mourning, and everyone, all levels of government, you didn't see Republicans and Democrats in the room. It was everyone going over to all the families, hugging them, spending a lot of time with them. And at that moment, you didn't see any political sides because the truth is, I really believe in my heart, there is no political sides. In essence, we all want the same thing. We just have different views how to get there. And at the darkest moment, I got to see one of the most beautiful moments, standing there 3 hours and seeing the families, and the families felt it. See, the families felt, like you said the point before, and even until today I talked to them, that everyone did the best they can. Although the results weren't what they wanted, but everyone did the best they can. And I know when it switched from search and rescue to search and recovery, it was very upsetting to the first responders. Because obviously you want to bring at least one good story. They couldn't bring anything. And they asked me to lead a service for the first responders. It was like maybe 1,000 them with the government and the mayor and the lieutenant governor was there. And, I told them that the pile that you're working is a holy pile because there's so many bodies in here. And don't look at it like you failed because returning a body to the family and burying it is a very, very important thing. So the next part of your task, obviously saving a life is the most important, but the next part of your task is also so super important.
And that's instinctive and primal for all of us to want that, to have whatever resolution there can be. Said, this is what we wanted, this is what we have, right? So let's look at when the Miami Herald did a great series on the towers, what happened, when it happened, why it happened, and at some point there were experts making some recommendations on that. So people should check that out. I think it's all available on videos. And also on Jim DeFeedy's show last night, he interviewed a mom and her two now teenagers. And you can see as you watch them, they were still traumatized, right? The mom was in the hospital for a while. The daughter, one of them broke her hip or leg. So the healing, all right, is far from over. It seems to be just beginning, and certainly on anniversaries. I know there was somebody that said, I don't think I heard, and I miss it.
Correct.
When this person said, what is it that
what they're saying is this is a particular child. His father was in the building and he misses his father. And maybe that pain of missing him was comforting to him in a certain sense. And he wants that special connection. It was super intense. And he misses that super intense, overwhelming feeling that maybe that connection was so deep at that moment. People say different things. Everyone is mourning in different periods, and everyone's relationship with the people that passed away in the building were different. For some people, it's a wife. Some people, it's parents. Some people lost both of their parents. I was talking to one individual. He told me his parents were 65 and 63. And he's thankful that one of them, they both went together. They didn't have to live the painful life of missing one or the other. Because some people, I know one person left that night out of state, and his wife was still in the building. And he tells me it's getting harder and harder. So there's so many different variables. Yesterday, I was in Doral with a family, the Langsford family, that the Doral dedicated their streets because Nikki, that's where she grew up, in Doral. And, very, very painful. And it's something to live. And that's why tonight there's going to be a ceremony on the site at that moment. But so it's, very, very challenging and very difficult for families.
And back to the first responders, more or less, how many first responders and people involved in that do you think there were? They were there every day.
Remember, they could only stay in the pile for a certain amount of time. It was in the hot, raining and everything. So they had people from different parts of the country came to relieve others. They would be on shifts. I don't remember now, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes. And it's,
there were hundreds, so many.
Hundreds, definitely, maybe 1,000,
So there was a great story in the Miami Herald today about a woman, firefighter, I think that's what she's called. And it's a great story about the trauma that she felt in trying to help recover whatever she could recover. So they are victims of this, the whole range, from the little child who no longer has a mom or dad, all right, to the teenagers that don't have the siblings. And so what can we do as a community to help these massive amount of people feel a little more comforted during this time?
Talking about the family members. So the answer is, if you have a relationship with them and you know them, this is, it's a very personal thing for them. If you have a relationship with the first responders, if you have a relationship with people that were in the building, is, check in on them and stay connected to them, because it's important. One of the things the family members, like tomorrow's anniversary, sometimes they feel like, okay, you were there that month and then you left, and now the anniversary's there, everyone's back here today. They want to feel that it's not just there at the moment, which that's also important, but also with them throughout the time, and stay connected to them, check in with them. Sometimes they want to talk, sometimes they don't want to talk. And there's still needs till today that they have that you could help them.
So let's talk a little bit about how to approach somebody that is grieving, whether it's in Shiva or in this case, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. So you give them a call. What do you say?
Right. There's two types of stories. There's a Surfside type of story, and then there's the regular stuff. Surfside type of story, why I think is very, very different. There's never been a story like that. I mean, maybe 9/11 is a little bit like that. As I mentioned before, it's ongoing for 30 days. So it's a little more challenging, that story. Like, what do you say after day 5, day 7, day 10, day 15, day 16, day 18, if you didn't have your family member? And then there's the regular, God forbid mother passes away, or there's a tragic accident. So the most important thing that I feel is, and people ask me today, what did you tell the families? Is there's nothing you could say. Now there's nothing you can say. People really don't want to be comforted in saying, well, then a better place. Oh, God knows what he's doing. Oh, everything will turn out okay. You'll get over it. What you need to do is to listen to them and take your cues from them. Sometimes they want to talk about the story. Sometimes they don't want to talk about the story. Sometimes they want to just not talk at all. So what you do is, you walk into their house, you give them a hug, and you let them start the conversation. That's one of the traditions of Shiva, is let them start the conversation. If I meet you on a regular day, you also may want to talk and I'll talk. So in Surfside, a lot of times people ask, what did you tell the people? So I didn't say anything. I just stood there with them, gave them a hug. I didn't say everything will be okay and they're going to come out. I didn't say, don't worry, And I listened to what they needed. And I responded. I took my cues from them. That's the key. Because our job is to be a comfort to them, not to say what I think is comforting. And until you go through it, you don't really know. And so many times people tell me, not only about Surfside and many other stories, that people have said things to them that were insensitive. Not that they meant to be insensitive, but they didn't say the right thing at that time. And that's the key.
So I often wonder, is there the right thing, all right? No matter what it is, it's never going to be the right thing, because it can always be better or writer or less offensive or less angry.
You know, where you go, you won't go wrong, is if you talk about the person, how they live their life. Meaning, or your mom was such a great teacher. She taught so many students. Or your brother, I used to love playing soccer with him. He was like such an great player. That people always like hearing. But don't talk about how they died. And don't start talking to them about, don't worry, God is going to help you. You don't know that moment what they want to hear.
A friend of mine was having some medical procedures done, and I was very close to him. He moved out of town. So he's telling me about it, texting, and then he told me when he was going to have it done. And so I waited. The next day, I just wrote in, checking in. And then he just told me everything had happened. He says, and thank you for caring enough to check in.
I love that line, checking in. Checking in gives them an opportunity to say thank you. Or checking in means I can respond. Or checking in means I can ignore.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up here. If you'd like to do a prayer, you could do it in English and the other languages that you would like.
Yeah, and I would just like to share. A lot of times people ask me, well, what message did you give to the families? So when I stood, and it's a message I think I'd like to end today with, I stood at the site when they switched from search and recovery to search and rescue to search and recovery. They asked me to lead a service there. So one of the things I told the families, and it always has to be at the right time, and I felt that was the right time. I said, you see this building behind us? This building collapsed. It was at that point, they knocked down the whole building already. And I said, a house could be destroyed, but a home always remains. The home that they built, the experiences that you had in this building, the happy moments that you had in this building, the love that was in this building, the relationships that were in the building, the commandments that you followed in the building, the Jewish traditions, if you're not Jewish, any religion in the building, that will always remain. And that connection that you have with your loved one before 1:23 a.m., the connection with their soul, with your soul, will always remain connected. Even though in essence, obviously, this is not what we want. We'd rather be able to be with them. But we really believe 100% that no collapse could take away that connection and dedication. And the other thing is to always remember that anything can change at one moment. And you have to make every day meaningful, every single day. Because every family member will tell you they never believed their life will change that night when you went to sleep and the next morning you woke up. So I pray with all of us that we can make every day meaningful and we can make every day a positive impact with our families and realize that we use the word killing time. You ever use the word killing time? And wasting money. Why? Because time you really kill, you can never make it back. Money you waste, you can make it back. This story tomorrow is a remembrance of 1 year of Surfside. But for us, what it means is that any moment, anything could change. And not that we have to be worried and depressed, but we have to make every day meaningful. Because in the wildest dream, no one believed someone will go to sleep in a building and not be able to wake up the next day in America. But you never know what's going to be in life. And the second thing, the last point is that unity that we felt over there, we pray that unity will always be there.
Okay. Any prayer?
Yes. I'm going to pray for all of us that, it's important to realize that prayer gives us our strength and prayer gives us all our blessings. So a prayer that I like to end with is a prayer we say in the morning. Thank you, God. Thank you, Lord our God, for having faith in me and returning my soul to me. Never take it for granted. Why is this a prayer that we say in the morning to thanking God? Because it reminds us, if I woke up this morning, there has to be a reason. June 24th, 98 people didn't wake up. But if we wake up today, me, you, and all of us watching the show have a purpose and a reason. And we thank you, God, for having faith in us, that although yesterday may have not been the number one day in my life, I'll make today my number one day.
Rabbi Yossi Harlig, Chabad of Kendall, Pinecrest, Director at Friendship Circle. Thank you for everything you do for our community. Folks, and thanks for joining us, and have a great day.